Welcome back to the United Pubcast. The transfer window is closed. The pub is closed. Sydney is closed. But Tom, our hearts are open. Viva Ronaldo. I'm still buzzing over that. But I'm excited to rip into this episode. How's your Wednesday going?
Well, how's my Wednesday going? I've spent the last 7 hours looking at photos of Ronaldo. That's about as good as my Wednesday has been.
Oh, he is a beautiful man. Please excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. I am sorry. We are late because of me. So I'm just going to enjoy this nice cold ice block. I didn't manage to get a nice walk in, actually, but work is busy. But not as busy as the final day of the transfer window. Chelsea doing some unreal business. And Tom, I'm really keen to get into it with you. So let's go straight into Manchester United. And this is meant to be completely impartial of you, but truthfully, let's assess the window. United obviously finished bringing in Jadon Sancho, Rafael Varane, and Cristiano Ronaldo. How do you rate the window? Are you happy with United's business? Could they have done anything better? What are your thoughts?
Look, 100% you have to be happy with it. I think when you look at it, and we'll break it down and get a little bit more specific, but when you just look at it on the outlook, okay, numbers-wise, you could look at Mbappe and Haaland as the best young players in the world, but if you're looking at numbers, you could make a case that Jadon Sancho is the best young footballer in the world. You'd very well make a case that Rafael Varane is the best defender in the world. And you've got a very strong case that saying Cristiano Ronaldo is the greatest of all time. Who would have thought after the Europa League final that we would have sort of added to the squad with those three sort of caliber of players? Now, a big hole in the team has been defensive midfield. We would have liked to have introduced a central midfielder. So on that sort of regard, you can't give it a 10 out of 10. And you do have to look at some of the outgoings. While the Dan James bit of business was fantastic, Phil Jones is still kicking around. Jesse Lingard's still kicking around. So the outs could have been a little bit better. And obviously the introduction of a defensive mid. But with the people who did come in, and especially for the funds they came in, like, okay, we don't care what money spent. It's not our money. But it is incredible business, especially when you look at some of the fees that other clubs have bandied about. United have done fantastic business on those three signings. And who's to forget, obviously, Tom Heaton as well. In regards to Ronaldo, Sancho, and Varane, well, if we're being spoilt, we could ask for that a little bit more, 5% more. You have to be over the moon with it. Who would have picked that 6 weeks ago?
I'm exactly in the same boat as you, mate. And even just assessing it as a neutral, there is undoubtedly an improvement in United's 11. If we want to rewind to 12 months ago, I recall us all saying, you know what, United's window wasn't horrible. They definitely improved the depth, but we needed players to come into the starting 11. And I think with those three acquisitions, they all walk into United's 11 now. So definitely an improvement from United. So give me a rating out of 10, Manchester United's transfer window.
Look, I just said you can't give it a 10 out of 10. It'd be very close. I'd be saying 8.5 out of 10, I reckon.
I think I agree with it. 8 out of 10 for the Reds. We've got a few comments in here, and if you are happy with Manchester United's transfer window, like the video. Don't forget Tom Heaton. I'm sorry, but bloody hell, he's like the 5th choice goalkeeper. So out of sight, out of mind, right, Josh? Right, we got Rubber in the comments. Varane, our best and most important sign. You know what? I agree 100%. I think we will look back at the end of the season. Varane he'll be the one where you said, you know what? He's the one who's evolved the way Manchester United play. Just look at what he did. Imagine first game in, gets against Wolves, the pace, the strength of Adama Traore. He got thrown into the deep end right away, and he did really well. So definitely excited about that. But this isn't a Manchester United video today. Let's go south of England. Let's talk about Arsenal and Tom.
South of England? I thought you were saying south, like bottom of the table south. I didn't know you were doing geography.
Well, it's definitely bottom of the table. But they are in the north of London, so there is an argument there. But let's talk about Arsenal's transfer window. What a shambles. Seriously. Firstly, you got Willian, who, imagine a player he's the opposite of Phil Jones. He's happy to terminate his contract just to get out of there. You've got Maitland-Niles putting on social media, I just want to go somewhere where I'm valued and I can play. And then they've spent 50 million on Ben White, who's a good player. I think that's fair to say. And the goalkeeper from Southampton, the name escapes me because he's a relegation goalkeeper, and I don't think he's that important.
Where did he come from? Bournemouth, I think. Ramsdale. I think it was from Bournemouth.
Yeah, Ramsdale. Yeah, sorry. Yes, from Bournemouth. But he's been relegated. countless times, and they paid 30 million for him. And I think when we need to assess Arsenal, we're talking about the ins and the outs on this video. Let's look at the outs. They let Joe Willock go, who's having a good time at Newcastle, it must be said. They brought in Odegaard, and they've spent the most out of anyone this transfer window, crucially. They've brought in Odegaard, who's a good player, but then you look at what Joe Willock was bringing. Did he really need to be sold? They let who's the goalkeeper? That's Martinez. They let Martinez go to Aston Villa, who's playing unreal football. They've now spent nearly £30 million on a backup goalkeeper. But what's going on? Arsenal are a shambles for me.
Well, look, United have been maybe not in this sort of dire straits, but United have been in a similar situation in recent seasons. But I think what this transfer window has done, and not only the transfer window, but the deadline day has sort of highlighted all the issues. It's all come into fruition all at once, and it's sort of been exposed. And you look at the sign, and who knows, we can banter about it in terms of this Japanese guy they've signed from the Serie A. We can have a bit of a laugh about it. He might be a great sign, he might be a flop, who knows. But it's just that type of thing that just makes no absolute sense. Like you look at the name you didn't mention was Granit Xhaka. In terms of outs, he wanted to go. He was publicly saying, "I want to go." Roma wanted to buy him. He was all but done. Even during the Euros, he was saying, "Yes, I'm going to Roma." This and that. Arsenal wanted to get rid of him. He wanted to go. 2 weeks later, he signed a new contract at Arsenal, and you just think, and then he's getting himself sent off away at the Etihad when your team desperately needs your so-called leader. And look, the transfer window is one thing, but the club is another thing, and they're in a complete mess. And this isn't transfer related, but you do look at next week when they do play Norwich. They are at home to Norwich. Look, 9 times out of 10, they are going to win that. And of course, Arsenal are not going to be in a relegation battle. They're in no danger of that. But you do have to start looking. If they don't take points from that, I think the next game might be Tottenham after that. So if you don't win against Norwich, then you lose against Tottenham. That's 5-6 games. You're suddenly looking at teams like, I don't know, West Ham or Everton or Burnley. They might be 10 or 12 points ahead of you already in the first month of the season. So Arsenal's business, considering they are the biggest spenders and they probably needed the most work to do, so on numbers-wise, think their board are probably saying, oh, look at the money we've spent, we're going to definitely improve. There's a very strong case to argue that they've gone backwards.
I agree with you. It's not about spending money. It's about where that money is spent, how it's spent. I think of clubs like Everton, who have spent so much money and they've spared nothing from it. Some of the transfers they've brought in over the last few seasons, and they've still been struggling. I think Rafa Benitez has started them well. It just shows if you spend poorly, you're not going to – you compare it to, say, a Leicester. Leicester don't spend the top end every season, but they found a way to keep that squad strong. Ever since they won the Premier League, we thought that's an anomaly. They'll be dipping down into the Championship sooner or later. Just shows it's how you spend that money. And
do you think Arsenal have been sort of what we sort of suffered from in recent seasons, where because they don't have European football, not only we had Europa League football sometimes, but they have no European football? Do you think they've almost dug themselves a hole now, where they do have to spend that little bit extra just to? It's a risk, and I'm not going to say they're going to do a Leeds where they're going to overspend and then find themselves relegated and sort of really pay the price. That's not going to happen, but they do have to sort of pay over the odds to just risk trying to get back to the top. Not even the top half of the table.
But Tom, they're spending it in awful areas. For example, when United didn't make the Champions League, when we sacked Louis van Gaal, who did we bring in the next season? Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Paul Pogba, Henrik Mkhitaryan, Eric Bailly. Okay? They've brought in Ben White. Now, I feel sorry for Ben White. I think on potential, I think he has the ability to be a good defender. But if you're going to bring in a young centre-back, he needs some sort of lead, at least an experienced head next to him. So a smart investment would have been get an older head next to a player like that. A Phil Jones even. Truthfully, a Phil Jones next to Ben White would actually be better because at least Phil Jones is experienced. He knows the Premier League. Someone who can guide him. Ben White's going out alone. The defense
you mentioned Phil Jones there, and catching one back to when we were at our low point where the last part under Van Gaal or maybe the last part under Mourinho, and you start to look forward, or how can we be successful in 5 years' time? And you start looking at the names in our team sheet, and we had Chris Smalling and Phil Jones. And you know deep down, okay, in this game, they might be able to get the 3 points for us. But deep down, you know, okay, that's not the future going forward. What I watched them do at the Etihad last weekend, their back three was Kolasinac, who doesn't want to be there, who Arsenal don't want to be there. They were actively trying to get rid of him. He was playing in a back three alongside Rob Holding and Callum Chambers. And the defending on show in that back three was fantastic to watch from a neutral. It was comedy gold. But you do look at that, and that does, if you are lining up with a back three like that, there's no way back. Like, that's going to take years and years and years of investment to fix, because okay, they're going to play. Okay, Ben White's out, so those are the new defenders. They're the backup defenders. So look, long may it continue, but they're in an absolute mess. Absolute mess. I watched It's a Football thing last night. Rob will be in the comments, and Scott, who's been on this podcast before, I felt sorry for him. They almost took pity. They didn't want to touch on the 5-0 defeat, and I'm almost like that with some of the Arsenal mates of mine. I do enjoy it, but there's a part of me where you do talk to them and you just think, God, it is bad. It never got this bad under Van Gaal or Mourinho for us.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I almost feel sorry for him. Like, I hate him and I'm laughing, but it's actually just sad. It's the fat kid at the back of the class who picks his nose. He thinks he's found gold in there, but no one's really going to break it to him. George, Arsenal have put a Band-Aid over current issues. Still a lot of issues there. Absolutely. Josh agrees with George's comments there. Arsenal are doing our tricks when we didn't know who to sign. Mate, you can't even compare to what United were doing. Like, United brought in some really strange signings. I think of like the likes of Marcus Rojo and you know, in fact, when I think of United signings, no one was really awful, but there just wasn't a plan. I think of the window where we signed Schneiderlin and Schweinsteiger. Like, there was no plan there. There wasn't a plan to say, all right, we're going to play this player here, and then in a few years we'll put this player here. And that was the thing with United, with Arsenal. It's just there's nothing. There's just no substance to it. Any chance to have a dig at Arsenal? Always good to see that Arsenal have a deep but shit squad. Yeah, I can't disagree, unfortunately. Yeah, exactly. Damian Schneiderlin, Bastian. Arsenal's transfer window out of 10, Tom?
Oh, God. Oh, like I've said, I don't want to be too harsh on Arsenal, but I think if you are being honest, look, I don't know. Is this going to sound harsh, saying a 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10? Like, they have spent a lot of money, but I think all things considered, I know it's early in the season, the window's just closed, but they're last in the table, and it looks like they're going to stay there for a couple of more weeks. And shocking for me. 2 or 3 out of 10, maybe.
Look, I think until we really get to see these signings and what they do, it's hard to say. Odegaard has potential. Ben White has potential. I'm willing to give it a 4. I'll give it a 4. It's definitely not a 4. But I think because we got to wait.
That's the thing. Well, that's the thing with any transfer, like Jadon Sancho, we can say that, or Rafael Varane, we can say that's a great signing. You cannot judge a signing until they leave the club. Until they leave the club and you have the full sort of evidence of what they provided, value for money. So, as I said, Ben White might turn into the next Rio Ferdinand. Odegaard might be fantastic. Fair play to him, but you won't know until the end. But on the evidence that we have so far, it does look bad for them.
All right, 4 out of 10 for the Arsenal. Chelsea. Mate, there's going to be an argument to say they've had the best window. They've been phenomenal. Romelu Lukaku obviously leads the headlines. They've brought in Saul Niguez today. Phenomenal signing. Am I missing anyone? Chelsea?
Sure, I know they sold Kurt Zuma on the last day, so they got rid of Kurt Zuma.
I know they were in for Condé. That didn't happen.
It sounds like I'm missing someone. Someone in the comments will be able to put it in. But that's the thing. I think
something's slapping me in the face.
There's a very good case that they have had the best window because obviously the areas that they have addressed, they needed a striker. They went and got a striker. Now I've got my concerns over Romelu Lukaku. I don't rate him too highly, but they needed someone who can score goals. Lukaku can score goals, so they fixed that area. And while I think they're quite well stocked in central midfield, if you do listen to a lot of their fans, a lot of them do call for they need a little bit more depth. And usually a depth sign-in would be, I don't know, you bring someone in from West Ham or Southampton or someone. They've gone and got one of Europe's most elite central midfielders to provide a little bit more depth. So it'll be interesting to see who plays and who sits on the bench. But you do look at those signings in sort of supposed weak areas for Chelsea. And look, at the end of the day, while we don't want to admit it, they're European champions. So they're the best team in Europe and they've gone and done that. So you do have to look at that. They've spent a lot of money in terms of Lukaku. I don't think he's worth that. But to Chelsea, he might be worth that. So, yeah, I have to say that's a very good window by Chelsea.
And not just that, they got Tammy Abraham off the books. They got a good deal with Roma and a buyback clause in there. Like you said, Kurt Zuma goes out. So credit where it's due. They're a well-run club. I don't necessarily agree with their manager or like their off policy in terms of how much they churn through managers, but they're running a steady ship there for sure. Even if it is just Lukaku and Saul Niguez, you're talking about, look, whether you fancy Lukaku or not, personally, I think he's a great striker in terms of what he brings in goals, but I don't like his all-round game. Saul Niguez, no debate for me, definitely one of the best midfielders in the world. Is there a concern with Chelsea, however, that it's maybe too much in the sense of, yes, it's only two players, but you only had Kai Havertz and Tim Werner come in last season. And it just seems to me, could it be that you've just got too many egos that you can't accommodate everyone, and that might create a bit of an issue?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I don't even think it's a bodies thing. I just think you look at that midfield and, Saul Niguez or N'Golo Kante, one of them's not going to be playing. Now, they might be, Tuchel might find a system where he sort of packs the midfield and has them all there, Kovacic. So someone who has been playing suddenly finds that, those three midfielders, three players who can sit in quite deep, Jorginho, Kante and Saul Niguez. If he wants to play one of them there and two aren't playing, suddenly, they might be fine with that for the first 5-6 weeks, but when they come back in and their morale isn't too high, how are they going to perform? That is obviously from a Man United point of view, is clutching at straws, hoping that the signings don't work. If we sign those players, we'll be saying that's fantastic depth. We're obviously hoping it goes wrong for Chelsea, but that is the one sort of negative. You can make that case in regards to any Man United signing. As great as Ronaldo is, someone who doesn't like Ronaldo could easily make the case that he's too old and the Premier League pace will get to him. So on paper, it's fantastic business by Chelsea, unfortunately. Time will tell how it unfolds for them. They've obviously started the season very well, so fair play to them.
Looking at their squad and what they've brought in for what their squad needs, 9 out of 10 for me, easily.
Would you put them as now? I still don't think so, because I still think, while City, and we'll get into City, they don't have a striker. I understand that. But the way City play, I don't love the way City play, but I do enjoy watching them. They are very good. For me, City are still favourites, even without a striker. You look at how easily they won the title last season, and Gundogan was their top scorer, for God's sake. But now you're looking at that business, and maybe City's maybe lack of business, and are you having Chelsea as maybe title favourites?
Chelsea are title favourites for me. They are.
What would you say to the people who then say, doesn't care what your squad looks like, doesn't care what your manager is, you've just brought Ronaldo in, Man United should be favourites?
I think United can definitely challenge, but the thing that makes Chelsea favourites for me is the depth. I think if you put United's strongest 11 out there, I think they can compete with anyone on their day, absolutely. No debate for me. But the thing with Chelsea is, if Jorginho is not fit, Kante plays. If Kante is not fit, Kovacic plays. If Kovacic isn't fit, you've got Saul Niguez to bring in. Like that midfield, and we said it, Tom, the midfield is the engine room of a football club. I think you can get away. Like, if United had an elite number 6, as much as I love the signing of Rafael Varane, I think if United had an elite 6, you could have gotten away with the Maguire-Lindelof partnership and still won the Premiership. I truthfully believe that. Because if you've got a Michael Carrick who can protect a Phil Jones or a Chris Smalling and cover the frailties in their game, it's okay, because he's got the quality to be in front of them, shield them, and promote the ball forward. United don't have that. And we don't have that in our strongest 11, let alone the depth. So that's the thing. And I think Chelsea, if any single player comes out of that squad, they've got a ready-made replacement. It's a good functioning system, and they've got a bloody elite football manager. I mean, I love Solskjaer. I think Solskjaer's perfect for what United need, but you can't argue with what Tuchel has done. He's come in after 4 months and won the Champions League. And that's without any look, and it was a good squad. Can't take away from that. But he won the Champions League with a squad that was not his. Now he's getting the pieces of the puzzle together. So, mate, they're favourites for me.
Yeah, no, it's hard to argue, unfortunately. Well, I would argue I still think City are slight favourites, but Chelsea fans, I think, have every right, unfortunately, to be a bit excited.
Can't disagree with you there. Liverpool, a quiet window, it has to be said. They brought in Konate, and then nothing.
They signed him. I think it was almost the end of last season they signed him, or if not, just after the season had finished, and it was type of like a pre-agreement type deal. So quiet. They've done almost what United have done in the past. If there's no business on deadline day, they announce a contract renewal here or there to try and get that a little bit of excitement. So their fan base is obviously a little bit frustrated with that. And look, they're in that position where you do need, okay, you have a good team, you have a good squad, you have a good manager, but you do need to take strides forward. And renewing contracts is important. obviously, but to take that next step. Because let's face it, they were poor last season. While they I think they scraped third last season, but they were quite poor. Obviously, a lot of people would, or their fans would argue that Van Dijk's like a new signing. But I think in terms of that front three, okay, it is good. They do play well, but they've been playing well for a couple of years. That is going to take a turn. One of them will have to sort of find his way out, whether one of their young players comes in or Diego Jota takes their spot, etc. I think that front three has run its course. Whether there's obviously they weren't even really linked with a striker, but a lot of their fans were saying if one player is to go, it's got to be Bobby Firmino and bring in a proper striker. They've been kidding themselves thinking they're in for Kylian Mbappe. But that type of striker, which I think they do need, because, okay, Firmino, as good as he is, a fantastic footballer, he's not that striker. He's a great player. He helps them, but they need a goal scorer. If Salah doesn't score, I think they need that second option, someone else who's going to guarantee a goal.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Liverpool shop in a different window, don't they? They're window shopping in a different neighbourhood to United, to City, to Chelsea. And that's not a disrespect thing. I think that's just the reality of it. They're never linked. They might be linked, but they're never in for those big name players. Like you're never hearing of them being linked with Jadon Sancho or Romelu Lukaku or whatever it might be. And that squad needs to evolve. The way they play needs to evolve. I still don't think they're getting the best out of Thiago. I think their midfield could use something. They definitely needed a striker. Tom, rating Liverpool's transfer window, and in fact, their transfer window, where do you think Liverpool will finish this season? We didn't really do a video on them during the rival series. Do they, for me, they're definitely fourth, but I think they could easily miss out.
It's hard. I think everyone has the same top four in terms of City, Man United, Chelsea, Liverpool, and then Liverpool's almost everyone's fourth. I would have them in fourth as well. In terms of rating a transfer window, well, they probably did well to keep the likes of Mane and Salah. As much as I've said, it does need a refresh. If they did lose one of those players and not able to replace them, that would have been a bit of a hard hit on them. So they've done well in that regard. I'd say 5 out of 10, 50-50. I think they obviously did need a partner for Van Dijk because the other central defenders have been quite injury prone in terms of Gomez and Matip. So I think that, but from what I know, Konate apparently is a little bit injury prone as well. I remember reading that when United were linked with him. So I'm definitely happy with the Varane signing over him. So time will tell. I don't even think he's played. He may have played. I'm not quite sure. But it will be interesting. I'd say 5 out of 10.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think Konate is a good signing, but they definitely did need more. Let's go through some of these comments. We've got Robert, not a lot of depth for Liverpool, and injury and the African Cup will hurt them. That's a really good point. They do have the African Cup Nations in January, and they'll lose Salah, they'll lose Mane right in the heart of the season. It's really
not good. Naby Keita as well, who plays a little bit for now as well.
Yeah, and they don't have the depth to cover in those positions. Fourth for Liverpool from Rob. Can't disagree with you there, mate. We've got George. They'll lose Salah, Mane, Matip for a month, potentially longer, depending on quarantine issues. Yeah, it's not looking good for Liverpool, and I hope it turns worse. Tottenham. It all centered around Harry Kane, but they did manage to bring a signing in. They brought in what was the lad in? I saw it today. Sorry, guys, I really don't follow.
They got that the Romero defender from over in Italy. I think he's at Fiorentina. Was it Fiorentina or Atalanta? I think he was at. I think he was only a loan deal as well. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, you do look. They did spend a little bit of money. They got the fullback from Barcelona as well.
Emerson, that's who they got in.
Emerson. To be honest, I don't think I've ever seen him play. So, but look, he's come from Barcelona, so I'm sure he knows how to kick a ball or two. But I think the whole business or the whole narrative around Tottenham, both financially and on the pitch, is just you simply have to look at the Harry Kane deal. Whether that was good of Tottenham to keep him or whether they should have cashed in, time will tell. But in terms of on the pitch this season, it's probably an important thing because, look, at the end of the day, they're at top of the table. So suddenly if they go another 4 or 5 games top of the table and maybe 1 or 2 teams have a slow start to the season, if a Liverpool or a City sort of drop points here or there, or God forbid us, who knows? It could be the season they are in a title challenge because Nuno's obviously done a good job so far. But the narrative around the transfer window is simply down to Harry Kane. Should he have gone? Or were Tottenham right to keep him?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the biggest win for Spurs. It's they did manage to keep Harry Kane. And I think he is professional enough that he will still tune in good numbers. Do you expect Harry Kane to still have an impactful season, or do you think we'll look back and say, oh, maybe this was the wrong call? That we do have to say, I know we're 3 games in, but Tottenham look astute under Nuno. They look well set up. They're clearly winning games, so that definitely helps.
In regards to Harry Kane and how he performed, you do mention that, and obviously all the people close to him do say he's an ultimate professional, and they've got no reason to believe he won't give 100%. I'm sure he will. But you do look again, God, it's hard to think this is 12, 13 years ago. But when Ronaldo obviously won the Champions League with United, he obviously wanted to move to Real Madrid, and Man United said no, or Sir Alex Ferguson said no, you can go next season, perform this season. And obviously looking back, obviously it worked out very well. But it could very well have sort of been a nightmare, and Ronaldo could have thrown the toys out of the pram and not performed. But I think he still scored 30-something goals in that 08-09 season. He was our player of the season. We made the Champions League final. We won the Premier League with ease. So I'm not expecting that of Harry Kane. But we've seen a Cristiano Ronaldo not get his move, be quite unhappy with not getting a move, and still perform to an elite level and be your team's best player. Whether Harry Kane does that, time will tell. For Spurs to have any type of success, and you can define success in many ways for Tottenham, but the only way to Tottenham have a good season is if Harry Kane has a good season.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think, look, talent always, it's your superstar players that will make the difference in the season. They're tracking well, but they'll definitely need Harry Kane fit and firing. I've actually got a list that they've had, with Spurs, I think it's who they've let go, which is important. And they've needed this cleanup for a while. Just look at some of these names. Musa Sissoko, Toby Alderweireld, Joe Hart, Eric Lamela, Danny Rose, and Juan Foyth. So it's a lot of dead wood that they've cleared off. And I think, it was probably the right time. It probably needed to happen. After they made the Champions League final, I think they had that crucial point where is this squad do you just need to add the final piece of the jigsaw to get what you want, or does it just need a complete rebuild? I think we all thought that Tottenham side just needed to be knocked down.
Well, they signed, obviously they kept Harry Kane, but they're able to extend Son's contract, which I think I think Harry Kane's the better player, the more important player. But you could very well make a case that deal for Son is just as important for them in terms of tying him down to a deal, because I'm sure there's many clubs across Europe would have been keeping their eye on him for sure.
Absolutely. Tottenham's window, obviously not a lot of renowned names there besides Christian Romero.
I'd say it was pretty solid for Tottenham. Look, we can evaluate at the end of the season financially and look at Harry Kane's value at the end of the season and see if it was a mistake or not. But at the moment, in terms of looking at the football pitch, they kept Son, they kept Kane, they've added to their defence. A lot of the Tottenham fans weren't happy with the likes of Alderweireld and Vertonghen sort of thing at the end of their career or the end of their time at Tottenham. So if I had to say it's a pretty good window, I'd say maybe, 7 out of 10. I'm not sure if that's generous or harsh, but yeah.
No, I think that's solid. Right. They've got Brian Gill as well. He's a really promising winger from all reports. So yeah, I think, and you look at how they're going, can't really argue with that. I think we've been saying here during this video, we expect Liverpool to finish 4th. Given how Tottenham have started, and we're saying their signings are good, they've got a new coach in. Do you think there's any possibility they could scrape in? I think there's a hope.
Oh, yeah. Look, there's always that team, a team we never even mentioned. We haven't really mentioned here, Leicester. We always never have Leicester in this discussion. Come February, March, we go, oh, yeah, Leicester having a good season. They're not going away. So Leicester will very likely still be up there. Look at one of the big boys, one of the teams we're talking about as a top 4 shoe-in, might have a poor season. Might slip away. Let's fingers crossed it's not us, but that could very well happen. So at the moment, they're going, well, look, it'll be I don't want to bring it back to Arsenal, but just for the sake of it, Arsenal are 20th and Tottenham are 1st after the first international break. Could you imagine being an Arsenal fan now and seeing your North London rivals 3 from 3, no goals conceded, top of the table? You're 20th, and not only 20th, you're 20th without a goal scored. I just thought I'd mention that just for the sake of it.
Yeah, I could imagine being an Arsenal fan. I could also imagine drinking acid. So there is that. And finally, Tom, we come to Manchester City. One signing, but a hell of a signing. Jack Grealish, £100 million, British record, good player, absolutely. But they didn't get the striker they wanted. Harry Kane, Cristiano Ronaldo, Robert Lewandowski, it didn't happen for them. Assess their window. Is Jack Grealish what they really needed? And I debated this with you, and before I bring it to you, let me just say, I think obviously he adds quality. I don't think he's what they need. And I don't think he makes them a stronger side. I don't think he's the key to them winning the Champions League. So as good as the player is, I think it's a similar case to United where you don't need Ronaldo, but you go and get him. You get one of the best players, an opportunity to get them, you go get them. I don't, it's underwhelming for me.
I think they're in a position they can almost afford to be underwhelming because they're that good. I still think the way they play, and yes, that there's always this adage you need a great striker, you need someone who's going to go guarantee you 30 goals to win a season. The way City play, and I think George sort of alludes to it a little bit in this comment, the way City play, they don't need a 30-goal a season striker. They got goals from everywhere. I said Gundogan was their top goal scorer last season. When he's sort of run rings around City as well. I'm not saying and it's dangerous to rely on a midfielder to be your top goal scorer. They've got the likes of Kevin De Bruyne. They've got Grealish in there now. Riyad Mahrez. Obviously, kept a hold of Raheem Sterling, which while he is frustrating and sometimes lacks a little bit of conviction, he's still in there. He still always pops up with goals and dangerous moments. They've obviously quite a short at the back. They've got one of the best goalkeepers in the league. They've got probably defensively, I assume they got the best defensive record last season. So they've obviously got good defenders. I just think the way they play, it doesn't matter if they don't have a good striker. They're camped, which George sort of says, the way they play is too overwhelming for teams outside the top six. And I just say that the way they just camp on the opposition's box, they're just going to create chances in terms of their movement. And they've got players who can score goals. So in terms of their window, they obviously wanted a striker. So Pep Guardiola, whether it was Pep or whether it was City, sort of did have their sort of eyes set on a striker, and they obviously failed in that. So you can't give them too high a score. And ultimately, at the top level, it might, in terms of the Champions League, it might come back and cost them. But 6 out of 10 with too many outs. Obviously, well, maybe the need for a striker is maybe more important than I'm leading on because obviously Sergio Aguero has gone. So in terms of bringing that extra body in, that maybe not even a top striker, just that extra body as a forward player. They obviously did lose Aguero. So, yeah, maybe a bit underwhelming. But as I said, unfortunately, I think they can deal with underwhelming. But if I'm giving it a rating, I'd say maybe 5.5, 6 out of 10.
I think 5.5 is fair because Jack Grealish is a hell of a player, but that's all they've brought in. So I think 5.5 is fair. But look, you're right. They're still a freaking phenomenal team. They put 5 past Arsenal. So there's an argument to say, well, what striker? What need for a striker? Clearly don't have a problem scoring goals. And Pep Guardiola, he's got a midfielder playing goalkeeper, so he's not concerned. You've got Robert here. Don't know why. Just don't fear City this season. Don't think Grealish addition improves them much. I agree with you, Rob, but mate, they're a good football side. I know Arsenal are garbage, but they seriously made them look second rate. And
did you see the percentage stats in that game in the second half?
81% or something possession.
I think that was overall, but in the second half, it was only 9% possession for Arsenal, and I think overall, the whole 90 minutes was 18 or 19%. So 81 to City, but 9%.
Probably the goalkeeper saves. Seriously. In saying that they don't win cups. Okay, he's talking about Spurs here. We've got Elliot, Man City game against Arsenal. Sum up their goal scorers. Everyone's a threat. Yeah, seriously. That's the thing with City. Like, we can say their window's average, but you look at that squad, it's still so strong. Aguero barely played last year. That is true. Very injury-ridden, but I think in those big games, and that's what we were talking about with Harry Kane, I think in those clutch games, and Arsenal, with all due respect, is not a clutch game. When you're looking for a moment from a striker to put the ball in the back of the net, I just wonder, will City lack that? I could be proven wrong, but that's just something to consider. So, Tom, let's just talk about the Premier League overall. You sent me a very interesting stat earlier, and I can't believe this, actually, and it just shows you how much money is in the Premier League. You ready for this? Deadline day activity totaled £150 million, meaning Premier League clubs have spent in excess of £1 billion for the 6th summer in a row. Premier League clubs have signed 148 players compared to 132 last season and 128 in 2 seasons ago. No less than 22% of all players signed by Premier League clubs this summer were acquired on free transfers, up 20% in summer 2020. I think that's pandemic, clearly speaking there. Only 4 Premier League clubs did not acquire a player on a free transfer, while there were 8 in summer 2020. The German Bundesliga is the only European Big Five league to increase its gross spending this year. Premier League's net. Now, this is the key stat for me. Premier League's net player transfer spend of £560 million dwarfed that of La Liga, £55 million. Serie A, £50 million. And Ligue 1, £15 million. Wow. Premier League's flush with cash.
I think, and it's nothing to do with those numbers. Obviously, you look at the Ronaldo deal quite individually. It's quite a small deal in terms of the transfer fees spent. But just the idea behind Ronaldo joining the Premier League and Lionel Messi leaving La Liga and going obviously to France, I think it shows where the Premier League's heading. And unfortunately, in terms of the football pyramid, in terms of Europe, maybe it's a negative in terms of sort of spreading the talent around Europe. But yeah, if you were a neutral, obviously we're not neutrals. We've obviously got the sort of heartache of watching United every week, whether it be a positive or a negative. We're so heavily invested in it. As a neutral, if you're a fan of the Championship or League One, if you're watching English football, you're in for a cracking season. I think it's just got everything's in store for the Premier League just to grow and grow, and ultimately, if it does grow, it's going to get better quality.
Yeah. Do you worry about European football as a whole? I know that's clearly not on this topic, but look, Ligue 1 won't die. La Liga obviously won't die. They've got two of the biggest clubs in the world there. Same with Germany, but the Premier League just goes strength to strength. You're seeing the lesser clubs attract big name players. If you think of Aston Villa, they got Leon Bailey. Leon Bailey was linked with Manchester United the last 3 seasons. No, it just shows like the money is there for good players to play at just about any club.
I think that's what I'm saying in terms of the football pyramid. Like in terms of Europe, you could say the same thing about England. If the Premier League grows, what does that do to League Two, the Conference League, etc.? Now, whatever happens with the Champions League in Europe, what does that do to the lesser clubs in Europe, sort of thing? But in terms of that, in terms of saying some of the players go into the so-called lesser clubs in England, I think that's why I don't get. I hate it when United lose. When United lose, I'm miserable. I don't want to get out of bed in the morning for a week until the next kickoff. But it's why I don't lose too much sleep, because the way some of the teams that you're going to mention, Aston Villa or Wolves, say we lost to Wolves, we want to buy half their team for 50 or 60 million pound. If they have 50 million pound players in their football team, they're good. Okay, it doesn't matter that some of United's players aren't worth that. Okay, if we want an Aston Villa player, if we want a Jack Grealish from Aston Villa, he's going to cost us 100 million. Players like that. So the quality, we will see a name on paper. We'll see Man United versus Burnley. Burnley player got a 20, 30, 40 million pound player in there who would sort of benefit United. So the quality is there in the Premier League, and it goes to show on your day, the team in last can beat the team in first. And ultimately, in the case we currently are, probably could happen. Arsenal could beat Tottenham. You know what I mean? If a Norwich is down there.
Absolutely.
A team like Norwich could on the day. I think it was last season they did beat City early on. So,
yeah, they did. Sheffield United beat Manchester United when we were second and they were 17th. So, but I think that just talks to the beauty of the Premier League. Like, that's what we know going into every game. Yes, you should win, but if you're off just that 5%, you can get beaten. So I think that's a really good thing for the Premier League. George is correcting me there. He was talking about Manchester City. Believe they'll fall short in Europe without a target man and a plan B. Look, I do agree with you, George. And I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, for the lack of tactician that he supposedly is, Pep Guardiola has struggled to beat him. So there you go. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is better than Pep Guardiola. Tom, been a good video, mate. Anything you want to add? Cristiano Ronaldo, how excited are you? Seriously, I'm still absolutely buzzing from that signing.
As I said, I've just been looking at photos of him all day. Shirt on and shirt off.
Good. What about pants?
No, the pants. Well, half his training photos have his shorts rolled up anyway, so you can't get away from it.
No, I'm talking about you. Your pants staying on when you're looking at pictures of Ronaldo.
Yeah, no, I was talking about Ronaldo. Enough about me.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I hope you have enjoyed that video. If you're happy Tom kept his pants on, like the video, because I'm definitely happy Tom kept his pants on. And if you like Cristiano Ronaldo at Manchester United, like the video. And you know what? If you're here, like the video. Why not just like the video? Because we need all that happiness, because we're still in lockdown and I'm really sad. But that's okay. Tom, pleasure as always, mate. I'm sure there will be lots of football for us to talk about. I'm just counting down to that Newcastle game now. Can't wait for that. And I think what could be a good topic for us to discuss is what's their first 11 look like now? And it's a really exciting topic because I don't think we've seen anything close to the strongest 11. And there's truthful debate now around what that, particularly around the attacking options. What's United's strongest 11? So definitely something to look at. I hope you've all enjoyed that video. Enjoy watching Portugal. Let's hope Ronaldo comes through skate free. You know what I want to see? I want to see a Bruno Fernandes assist to Cristiano Ronaldo this weekend. You feeling that?
You could almost see that happening. That's written in the stars, I think.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Pleasure as always, mate. Catch you in the next.
Mate.
Cheers for tuning in. We'll catch you. See you.